Hello everyone, this is Ange. Welcome to another episode of the Visual Novel Monthly Recap, this time talking about news that happened in March of 2025. Shirobune announced that they'll be doing a simultaneous release of Touhart 1 Remake on Steam with Japanese, English, and Chinese translations. It's nice to see that Aqua Plus still cares about the English market, especially with the Steam page already up. Touhart 1 is one of the original dating sims way back in the 90s by Leaf, and seeing a classic remade with 3D graphics is interesting, but we'll have to see how that turns out when it actually releases. So far, it looks like it's set for late June 2025, with a likely possibility that a Touhart 2 remake could come eventually if 1 does well, according to a Famitsu article. Looks like the original Sky Full of Stars, or Miyazora by Poltop, is cursed to never have its 18+ scenes properly translated. The fan translation group Snowy Ryujin TL has had a failed recruitment for this not once, but twice now. They're trying it yet again, but with how long the 18s are and how old A Sky Full of Stars is now, I can't imagine many people are eager to take it on, but if you're interested in helping, you can reach out to the Snowy Ryujin fan translation group to help out. Shirobune has released Kuropo's latest visual novel, Hentai Prison, or as it's spelled on Steam to avoid the banhammer, Henpri. This has become one of the most hyped up modern visual novels in recent history, scoring a rare 90 average on Aero Gamescape, the Japanese equivalent of VNDB. Since Hentai Prison was developed by Kuropo, the team behind the Nukatashi series, you can expect their signature focus on goofy sexual settings and jokes. However, from what I've read so far, this title is definitely much more serious compared to Nukatashi right from the start. The story revolves around sex offender criminals in prison, with heavy drama, including the main character being bullied by prison guards, wardens, and even fellow inmates. The world building around the prison system is surprisingly well thought out, clearly eventually leading up to an eventual prison break. Visual Arts and Key pulled off yet another pseudo-shadow drop release. After bringing their first ever visual novel, Canon, to Steam in English in mid-2024, they've now released Air, their second ever visual novel on the platform with an official English translation. While some people have mixed feelings about Air compared to other Key works, it's still very highly regarded, especially among hardcore Key fans, for having one of the least Deus Ex Machina endings in any of the Key stories. The True Route in particular is particularly memorable, which is exactly what you expect from Key and Jun Maeda. If you want to experience one of Key's classics, you can read it in its remastered glory on Steam. Spike Chunsoft and Mages have released remasters of two of Kotaro Uchikoshi's earliest mystery visual novels, Never 7 and Ever 17, from the Infinity series. This is a notable release for several reasons. Ever 17's original official PC version was previously limited to the now out-of-print, rare and expensive Hirameki officially translated version, and Never 7 only had a fan translation and never an official English translation until now. It's great to see both getting what I consider at least decent remastered engine work. As someone who has read both of these titles way back in the day, I could definitely vouch for Ever 17 as one of the most memorable and one of my personal favorite sci-fi mystery visual novels, and one of the few by Uchikoshi that doesn't have a murder aspect to its mystery. Instead, it follows a group of young adults and a few kids trapped in an underwater theme park that's slowly flooding after an accident, and the group have to find a way to escape. In addition to having mind-blowing plot twists, it can get surprisingly very emotional, approaching Nakige territory at times. Never 7, the first title in the Infinity series, is much more of a mixed bag for me. It was clearly experimental and had a lot of issues like too much mediocre slice-of-life romance and characters that Ever 17 later refined. But if you're curious about Uchikoshi's earliest take on the mystery genre, as some aspects do not get used in later titles, Never 7 might be worth checking out. That said, there are some concerns among hardcore Uchikoshi and mystery fans for this English remaster though. Some have dismissed this remaster as relatively low effort, pointing out its basic modern UI and a number of typos. For Ever 17 specifically, the script is based on the Xbox 360 remake version, which had several rewrites Uchikoshi apparently did not participate in. This includes giving Sarah a completely rewritten backstory and route, and enforcing a stricter route order, among other various changes that affect almost every route. That said, personally, as someone who read the original Ever 17 15 years ago, and as someone who's reading the remake's remaster right now, I think this remaster is infinitely more readable for newer players. A lot of the complaints seem pretty nitpicky to me just because Uchikoshi didn't oversee every script change. From what I've read so far, almost everything has just been quality of life updates in terms of visuals, pacing, and just an overall better moment-to-moment experience, and I think newer players can read this one just fine without the original Ever 17. Despera Drops is an otome game developed by D3 Publisher and translated by Axis Games, just released exclusively for the Nintendo Switch, unsurprisingly. The premise seems to follow a main character who accidentally gets framed for a murder she did not commit while touring in Italy. A bunch of people attacking her, who I'm going to assume are the main male love interests, are after her for her supposed powers. Kamitsubaki Studio and Orange Inc. have released a simultaneous Japanese and English version of a new visual novel called Kamitsubaki City Regenerate. Based on the translator for this title, John Hooper Keeper of Lemniska. This is a sci-fi, thriller, urban fantasy, mystery visual novel that was written by Soki Tsukishima, the main scenario writer of Root Double. It also seems to feature virtual YouTuber heroines, or VTubers, which is a pretty unique and fitting premise for a visual novel released in the 2020s. As someone who liked Root Double and enjoys sci-fi mystery stories in general, I'm definitely interested in checking this out. I don't know how they did it, but the developers of the visual novel Trap Yuri Garden were able to get that title on the Nintendo Switch eShop. If you're into male cross-dressing romance and can't resist grabbing it on Switch, go for it. Altersuz released an official English translation of Twin Angel Relight, fully titled Phantom Thief Angels Twin Angel Labyrinth of Time and World Relight. This is an old-school magical girl-themed all-ages visual novel, something pretty rare in the VN scene. It originally came out on the PSP in Japan, and this is a full HD remaster of that. Like other magical girl stories in anime and manga, the girls are schoolgirls by day and fighting evil by night. But there is also a strange additional related release this month that I haven't seen since Sekai Project's release of Jisenjo no Mao on Steam, a separate DLC that restores full voice acting and adds new stories to Twin Angel Relight. Not sure why they released it this way instead of just bundling everything together, especially since the base price for this full voice DLC is $10, while the non-voiced version of the VN is $17, but maybe they figured some people would prefer a cheaper version with no voice acting? One of the strangest announcements I've seen in recent visual novel news history is the planned live-action adaptation of The House and Fata Morgana. The developers of the original visual novel are specifically looking for an experienced producer, director, and/or showrunner. There's been some debate about whether Fata Morgana would work better as a live-action series or an anime, but regardless, it seems like something they want to pursue, considering how popular the original visual novel release was. Shinzo Translations, the fan translation group behind Karanai Sekai and Sosaku Kanojo, announced their next fan translation project, Dekinai Watashi ga Kurikaesu, which roughly translates to Time Leap, I Will Start Over Again and Again for You. Originally developed by Akabe Soft 3, this visual novel seems to be based on time travel with a small layer of multi-route mystery, but I'm told it has a large focus on typical high school age romance. Shirobune has released the latest entry in the Real Situation series, Real Eroge Situation DT, developed by Jitaku Studio. Though on Steam, it's going to be called Real Anime Situation DT. Like the previously released Real Anime Situation 2 by the same developer, it looks to be a goofy, quirky nuki-gay with characters that are ridiculously horny for a passive protagonist, leading to ridiculous over-the-top humor. DT appears to have animated sprites and apparently won a Moe Game Award. For those who don't like Shirobune's usual translation localization style, especially with what they did with the Nukatashi series, someone created a delocalization, honorifics, and improvement patch for Henpri Hentai Prison. They put back honorifics, original Japanese name order when characters spoke full names, and changed some of the localizations of main character Shuichiro's catchphrases, with an example being the original Shirobune translation, I'm gonna fucking inhume you baby, being changed to a simpler, I'm gonna fucking crush you baby, among other things. Phantom 099 helped release an English fan translation patch for the Vita version of Ebikore plus Amagami. Amagami previously had English fan translations for its PS2 and PSP versions, but this Vita version is specific for its higher resolution, slightly re-edited script to fix typos and oddities, redone image editing, the whole game contained in one patch unlike the PS2 and PSP versions which were split too, and a very small amount of previously untranslated content now translated. Amusingly enough, in the same month that Snowy Ryujin was both looking for and apparently found a new real human translator for the H-scenes in the original Miyazora or A Sky Full of Stars, there was another project by Hana from the Ubisoft fan-made Discord who made a patch to restore the H-scenes using Claude 3.7 Sonnet AI, basically AI machine translating these H-scenes into English with some minimal editing for character name consistency and a bit more readability. I personally tried this AI patch really quick and, well, considering H-scenes aren't exactly on many people's radar to actually read, this patch is definitely a huge upgrade in readability over the original machine translation patch from several years ago. I already thought the original Skyfall of Stars was more than readable without H-scenes. If you just want to generally know what's going on in these H-scenes though, from what I've read, this AI translation does the job well enough, but if you really need that human touch, I guess you can wait for the Snow Ryujin version, assuming it actually completes this time. The hardcore Rance fanbase has been waiting many years for this, but after almost every other mainline Rance game has been released, Manga Gamer finally went back, completed, and released the remake of Rance 03, The Fall of Liazaz. This is a remake of the original Rance 03 game, which first came out in the 1990s, with its remake originally releasing in Japan in 2015. What's interesting about this Rance 03 remake is it is one of the few, if not the only, Rance titles in the entire series that's almost fully voice acted, even giving the main character Rance some voice acting in battles only. Outside of that, Rance 03 is probably what you'd expect from the Rance series, a fantasy setting with gameplay that looks very JRPG-ish, and of course has a lot of what YouTuber Ads, who covers the Rance games a lot, calls struggle snuggling many of the female leads by our main protagonist Rance. The first Tayutama Kesamai Deity has released on Steam. This visual novel, originally released by Frontier Works, is a classic HD remaster following similar recent classic HD remaster releases like Fate Stay Night, Air, and Ever 17. It's an all ages only release with no 18+ patch included. Unfortunate, since it was originally an eroge, and there's no planned way by the devs or translators to provide that spicy content. You can grab Tayutama on Steam and Switch. It's a story about ancient Japanese deities and a protagonist who's got supernatural powers in his bloodline, but is still mostly a romantic fantasy adventure story telling a heartfelt tale of growth, connection, and the mysteries of love. From what I've read, the route quality is hit or miss, with some having meh writing, others shining with solid heroines and tear-jerking feels, and a few that are trash with no character development. It's worth noting the main writer for Tayutama previously wrote for some Dai Alisoft visual novels like Dai Bancho Big Bang Age and Dai Teitoku. Nekonyan has released their official translation for the HD version of Sprite's first visual novel, Koichako, or Love, Elections, and Chocolate. Despite being from the developers of the Aokana series, Koichako is quite different. It's a typical high school romance drama, with the protagonist Yuki being part of the Food Research Club, a laid-back group that mostly eats snacks using the club's budget. Life's chill for them until the upcoming student council election threatens their club's existence. To save it, Yuki gets roped into running for student council president despite his initial reluctance. What starts as a simple fight to keep their snack-eating haven turns into a messy mix of school politics, personal drama, and romance. I've seen mostly mixed to slightly positive reception for this Moege title. If you're curious about the beginnings of the company that made Aokana, you can check it out, but just remember, Koichako has a different genre, story-focused artist, and even scenario writer. There was also a fan translation of the original non-HD version of Koichako long ago, if that matters to you. Jazz has released one of the newer Nitro Plus, or I guess technically now Nitro Origin titles, Mojika Truth Rears Its Ugly Head. As you'd expect from a typical Nitro title, this is a dark psychological horror visual novel with a heavy focus on H scenes. This time, the protagonist is intentionally unattractive and gets harassed by his fellow female classmates, but he also has the ability to see words floating around people's heads based on their thoughts. The story appears to be a revenge-style plot against his female bullies and has elements of a multi-route mystery apparently. If you're interested, be prepared. Like most 18+ Nitro titles, this one is bound to be incredibly dark. Mojika is available on both Steam and the Jazz Store. Bushiroad Games announced a new visual novel for the popular anime and manga, The Ancient Magus' Bride, subtitled The Phantom, Midsummer, and the Dreaming Journey. For reference, Bushiroad Games has done visual novels for previous anime titles like Revue Starlight, El Dorado, and the upcoming Love Live Nijigasaki. If it's anything like those, it's most likely going to be some kind of canon-ish sequel or side story to the main story of Ancient Magus' Bride. According to the website, it's going to release on October for PS5, Switch, and Steam, and will have English text. If you've been looking for high-quality visual novel stories on your iPhone or Android, we now have one through the release of The House in Fata Morgana. It's free to download, but at a cost. You have to be at least a mega fan sub on Crunchyroll, so basically the tier where in the US, you're paying at least $12 a month. Prototype announced there's going to be a Switch release for Innocent Grace's Cartagra, aka the prequel to the Karo Shoujo series, specifically the full HD remake that got released in Japan in the 2020s. It will have English and Chinese translations. Kinda weird it got announced before I assume Shirofune would do a PC Steam release eventually, but regardless, this Switch version is planned to come out sometime in 2025. On the latest Nintendo Direct for the Switch One, Spike Chunsoft announced there's going to be a third The Somnium Files title called No Sleep for Akaname Date. Despite the first two titles originally written by Kotaro Uchikoshi, who did Ever 17 in the Zero Escape series, he's apparently going to be taking more of a scenario supervision role instead, with main writer of Somnium 3 going to Yamada Kazuya instead. The plot appears to be Iris is trapped in a mysterious escape game and Date is trying to track her down and save her, bringing back the typical investigation and Somnium dream exploration style gameplay of previous titles, but also, according to the website, solve puzzles to break out of locked rooms in the new escape sections, which sounds like the Seek a Way Out escape rooms from Zero Escape. This title is currently planned out to come out on July 25th, 2025 on Switch and Steam. And that wraps up the news for March of 2025. As always, if you have any feedback, positive or negative, feel free to leave a comment below or one of my social medias. Just wanted to give a quick shout out to my continued editor, The Local Weeb, as well as my monthly paying members on both YouTube Members and Kahi. Much appreciated to all of you.